Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, thanks for being at the meeting today. Important date in history, especially for me, is February 13th, 1962. I'll get more about that maybe later. I wanted to basically give you a briefing on, since this is an icebreaker speech, you want to know more about me, and it gives me an opportunity to do probably my first speech in here other than table topics. I thought I'd go over some of my background. I was born here in Phoenix, so I'm officially a native. There's more of us here now, obviously, because of the weather. Second, I went to all three schools here in Arizona, grade school for four. Grade school, high school, and college. I went to NAU, and I graduated with a business finance degree. And I also went to the American Graduate School of International Management out in Glendale, because I was originally planning on going overseas to work. I have worked overseas. I did an internship in Guadalajara, Mexico for 9 months while in between semesters at Thunderbird. I also did, I got a job through school working in Spain for a manufacturer that lasted about 7 or 8 months. Spain is, I don't know if you've traveled in Europe, but if you've been to Mexico and you like Mexico, Spain is a totally different place. It's a different dialect because I'm a gringo and I learned Spanish in Mexico. You almost give off that sound when you speak, so people tend to make fun of you over there. So I didn't like working in Spain, so I came back to Arizona and I sold copiers for about 1.5 years, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. You had to not only load the copiers back then, this is like in 1986, used a gurney, kind of like you see people going in on an ambulance, and you had to go into offices, sometimes cold, and do demonstrations and talk about the copiers. Oh, and it was July, and you had to wear a tie, and sometimes you had to wear a jacket, and I'm a big-time sweater, so you can imagine what that looked like. So about the time I decided to do something else was the day I had a van where it shorted out the electrical in the van. So not only could I not drop the windows, but the air conditioner didn't work. So I spent a whole day driving around Phoenix in about 118 degrees. So about that time I decided I wanted to do something else. But it was a great basis for a sales background. After that I went into the brokerage industry, primarily with a company here in town that focused on bond sales, primarily municipal bonds. But we also did a lot of other things. I was in that business roughly for about 14 years. I'd advised banks, mutual funds, and individual investors on all types of investments. I had a partner in 1999, we ended up moving to Wells Fargo. 4 years of working for a big bank. I was like, I need to do something else. It was really miserable. And plus, we just went through that tech bubble and all those type of things. So it made, today wasn't is a lot worse than it was then. So I decided I wanted to buy my own business. So I didn't know what type of business to buy. And it's a great idea, hey, I want to buy a business. But what are you going to buy? And I had a friend, luckily, that bought a business numerous times, bought, sold, and made some pretty good money, and he knew the ins and outs of buying businesses. So since he just completed one, he asked me if he wouldn't mind helping me look for one. So what we started doing is we figured out how much money I could spend, and then we started looking, calling brokers, using the newspaper, talking to contacts. All this time he was working and I was still working. So he assisted me in finding a couple different companies that we looked at, and this is all over the span of about a year. He called me one day and he ran into a staffing company. I was like, oh, staffing company, I don't know anything about that. And he said, well, the guy that owns it, it's in a transportation business that does commercial drivers, the guys that drive the big rigs. So he said, we should go take a look at it, and I go, okay. So I went over there, and we looked at the business, looked like the guy idea. It was just kind of not being done correctly. It needed a little bit of management. So I ended up making an offer. I took the business over. What was handy is that my father, who was in town here for probably 50 years, was in the transportation business. So since we have the same name, a lot of people remembered my father. So I was able to take that and use that to grow the business into the transportation. And then what we started to do is not only transportation, we started to do recruiting for other businesses like warehouses and mechanics and technicians for, tool shops and things like that, admin, clerical. So I basically got into that business only because I was looking for something that was good for my particular personality. Over the years, I've been pretty good at judging things that go on based on intuition. That's a lot of things that go into the employment business. Not only have I hired people before, but I did lots of presentations for the bank when I worked there. I did all kinds of presentation at companies for investment plans or whatever. So I was very used to answering questions on the run. You have a prepared presentation, but the real deal was at the end when everybody asked questions. So one of the things that I try to do when I do presentations is I always have lots of room for questions, and I try to write down every question I could possibly be asked in that setting, good, bad, or indifferent, and try to have an answer so it just rolls when they ask you, so you don't have to pause. It doesn't always work. But what it does is it does help you generate a good idea and to be able to communicate. What blew me away was when we did those table topics and you did the theme song. I was just, if I had to write down, one that I would have never blanked out, that one blanked me. I really had a difficult time with that. Another thing that I've recently gotten into that I thought I'd share with you pretty heavily is, first of all, I'm not very good with computers. I can't stand using them, but I use them all the time. I've got BlackBerry, I've got the whole shebang. But when this economy started, I kind of saw the economy turning down about a year and a half ago because of the way the employment industry is. It always leads everybody into a recession. So I could see business slowing down. So I got into networking on not only groups, but LinkedIn and YouTube. We set up a MySpace site for my company, our websites, writing articles. I like to write. Of course, I have somebody look them over. Believe me, I can make a lot of mistakes. Blogging about subjects that I think I know about or maybe not know about. And developing that type of repertoire along with doing speeches at some universities. I went to NAU. I've spoke there a few times on employment topics, and I've also done presentations for their investment area of the student size. So that's a great idea now if people are looking to do something different, but it does cause a lot of time to be used. Your daily routine has to be constantly nurturing these 4 or 5 different areas. But what my goal is long term is I want to kind of be known as the employment expert in Phoenix. So in order to do that, you got to be on the news or in the newspaper, write articles. So that's kind of my long-term goal. One of the things I wanted to go back to is the most important day to me, and what I thought was really important to everybody else, is February 13th, 1962, which is my birthday. So my birthday is today.
Whoa.
So thank you. And that's why when I signed up for the speech, I couldn't think of anything to bring up for the topic, so I figured I'd just say something about February 13th,